Welcome to The State of Us.
Beyond mainstream cable news and party lines, with a millennial and a boomer, The State of Us pushes past the noise and uncovers all the issues that matter.
Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
Is there life beyond Earth? What makes us human, and where is our place in this massive universe? Well, these are questions many of us have pondered, and science holds many of the answers. Cosmos Possible Worlds is the most recent book installment of the Cosmos series. It is also a new TV series premiering in September of 2020 on Fox that explores how humans came to be and what might lie beyond our planet. Today is the second episode where we get to speak with the person responsible for this masterful work. Ann Druyan is an Emmy and Peabody award-winning American writer, producer, and director specializing in the communication of science. She co-wrote the 1980 PBS documentary series Cosmos, hosted by Carl Sagan, whom she married in 1981. Ann, thanks for joining us to continue the conversation.
I'm really glad to be with you, Justin.
And of course, we couldn't begin this critical conversation on science and the cosmos without
TrueChat senior historian and an educator of more than 30 years. Here is your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
I'm really excited for this second segment of the show. I think it's a lot of good questions to follow up the first one. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
It would probably be hard to write a book entitled Cosmos Possible Worlds and not at least discuss the possibility of sentient life beyond Earth. There seems to be a high probability of evolved life beyond our planet, and yet there appears to be an apparent lack of evidence proving it. And this is often referred to as the Fermi paradox, and it raises two major questions for us. If there is other sentient life out there, what does that mean for humans? And if not, and we're the only ones, how would this change our outlook?
You know, in the absence of evidence, we have to withhold judgment. That's what science requires. And yet, the idea that we live in a galaxy of a couple of 100 billion stars, and that, you know, of which our sun is merely one. And the fact that we're learning in terms of exoplanet research how common planets are. And also, so then you think of, well, that's a couple 100 billion stars, maybe every other one of them or more, having a retinue of planets the way that our sun has. And then you think of that galaxy as being only, you know, our Milky Way is just one of hundreds of billions of galaxies, each of them with hundreds of billions of stars. And then it just becomes very hard to assume that life is only here. And this is a great time to live in terms of the possibility of answering these questions. And, you know, I've thought a lot about the Fermi paradox, and we have only had an ability to receive radio signals for less than 150 years. And if we had been bombarded by radio signals, you know, at any time in the previous 4 billion year history of the planet, we have no idea that ever happened. And you know, just as only 150 years ago, we didn't know how to receive radio signals. Perhaps there's some other means of communication that we have yet to tumble to figure out. Further, you know, the spaces between the stars are so vast that the idea of, you know, extraterrestrials schlepping from world to world, from star to star, seems like, maybe that's not the best use of energy or time. Maybe there are other ways that we're just beginning to discover to be able to use other strategies to image the surfaces of distant worlds and to understand the presence of the chemicals and possibilities therein. So I'm not daunted by the Fermi paradox. My mind is completely open, but I think that we're about to find out that perhaps not intelligent life yet, but perhaps intimations of life. I don't think that discovering intimations of life on other worlds is very far away.
I'm thrilled to hear you say that, because I certainly hope to live to see it. I think much like the pale blue dot helped us better understand our place in the universe, I think the possibility of discovering that we're not alone in this universe, that life exists beyond our planet, hopefully helps us accomplish the same thing. Because when you watch Cosmos, and for anybody out there listening who saw the last season, Cosmos: A Space-Time Odyssey, I think about when watching that, and you get the image at one point where, much like you were explaining, you see our little Earth around our sun and the countless solar systems that exist in our Milky Way galaxy, and the millions of Milky Way galaxies that might be out there in our universe, and then our universe possibly being one of millions or billions of other universes. You really start to get that picture of, it makes a lot of what we squabble over on a regular basis start to seem pretty trivial.
There are so many wonderful lessons in your book, and unfortunately, we only get to cover a few of them today. One of the most important things you show us in the book is the humbling nature of the small amount of time we humans have been around. Briefly help us understand what you mean by the cosmic calendar.
We did this in the very first Cosmos series in 1980, and I've been doing it ever since. And what it is the entire history of the universe, 13.8 billion years, compressed into a single year at a glance calendar. It was Carl Sagan's brilliant insight that while we can't even imagine really what 1,000 years is, because we live so briefly, 100 years if we're very, very lucky, that how could we possibly appreciate the amount of time that since the very beginning? It would be impossible. But if you were to compress, and I'm just doing this very roughly, let's say every month into 1 billion years, and then to divide up that month into days, and so forth, so that January 1st, the first moments of January 1st is the Big Bang, and December 31st, midnight, is right this very moment. You would be able to see how recently our star turned on, how old our Milky Way is, how old our planet is, and not only that, but how long this planet has harbored life, how long there have been life forms on the land, how long human beings have existed. And it turns out that all of our recorded history, all of it, fits into the last minute of that year. So that the great prophets of the world's religions were only 12, 10, 6 seconds ago. And the universe existed for all that time before then.
When I watched the last Cosmos: A Space-Time Odyssey, the cosmic calendar, I think, was the thing that really was the hook for me, because it was that humbling experience of understanding our place in things, and it really opens your eyes. We've been talking with Ann Druyan, author of Cosmos: Possible Worlds, about humans' place in the universe. But a number of questions still remain. How do we know the age of our universe? And are science and the world religions in conflict? To find out, keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back.
The State of Us. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
The search for intelligent life beyond Earth and humanity's place in the universe. These are big questions, and they often leave us wondering, how does science know?
Often when we talk about things like the cosmic calendar, many people want to know, what proof do we have to support the claims that science is making? So, how do we know the age of our universe?
This is the work of physicists, astronomers, chemists, biologists. The dating of the great events, the great cosmic events, and the local ones here on Earth is the summary achievement of science. And what's so wonderful is that if in one discipline, you're doing carbon dating, or you're, figuring out how long the layering of the geological layers are. You're figuring out, you're doing chemical analysis to find out when the last big collision that wiped out the dinosaurs 60 million years ago, the Cretaceous Tertiary event. These events are carefully timed. Now, that's not to say that they may not be changed. Since the very first cosmos, we were writing that cosmos in a universe that was 18 billion years old, or 15 billion years old. Now, this cosmos is 13.8 billion years. Doesn't mean that, the scientific calculations that led the community of science to a consensus on the age was completely wrong. But new methods, new approaches, that's the great power of science, both that it's fostering new approaches, but also that it's never afraid to admit it's wrong.
I think in today's world, Ann, it's something that we probably take for granted because we're so used to people not being okay with that. But really, it's one of the hallmarks of what we do on The State of Us, or try to do anyway, which is be very open and willing to be okay to change your mind when new information becomes available. That's something we could benefit from across all areas of our lives. And it's good that we have, I think, a field of study and research science that's devoted to this concept of, we take an idea, we test it, we learn from it. And then if we test something again in the future, or we discover something new, it could change that current understanding. And it's all right. That's okay. It's healthy. And really, it opens doors for us, right?
And that is when new approaches become available, new technologies become available to ascertain whether the previous science was correct or it was wrong. Science doesn't try to suppress it. Science welcomes it, because that is its greatest strength, to be able to admit you're wrong. And then because really all that matters is the reality of nature, not our delusions, not our careers, not our egos, but really nature is everything. And so, yes, there are so many different independent stains of causality that at this moment lead us to believe that the universe is 13.8 billion years. But if new evidence should arise to say that that's not true, that it's older or younger, then science will embrace it.
I couldn't agree more. I used to start every social studies year out by asking my classes where the three places are that we found with the oldest human remains. And some of them eventually would come up with the answer. And I would ask them, why is that? And they'd kind of look at me and dumbfounded. I'd say, because that's where we found the oldest bones. What would happen if you would go home tonight and dig up your backyard and find human remains that were older than that? And they're like, oh, said, yeah, then we'd have to change the story. And that's exactly, Ann, what I think you're talking about here, is that this is what we know now. And these are the facts as we know them, and we make our decisions based on that. If it changes, wonderful. That just means that we've learned more and can make better decisions in the future, but we're using the knowledge we have now to make the best decisions we can at this moment.
It's kind of that idea, Lance, that science answers many questions, but it also asks new ones. And Ann, that's really kind of what we took away from your book. You've got a lot of answers in there, but you also lead us to ponder new questions. Listening to you talk about the cosmos and the state of our world, I keep thinking about the idea that science and religion or faith are perceived as being in conflict. A lot of us are led to believe, regardless of our background, that science and religion are diametrically opposed to one another. Do you think that it needs to be this way? And what's your personal experience been like?
I was very lucky because my grandparents were very loving and profoundly devout. They truly believed in God. We're Jewish, and they were Orthodox, and they observed every conceivable law and minor rule of our religion. I've never known any people who were as devout as they were. And yet they never tried to inflict or impose their beliefs on my father and on me. They had from their point of view, the only sin would be to pretend, because they really believed in God. And so it wasn't for, social pressure, peer pressure, keeping up appearances. It was real for them. And so I felt in their generosity, in their kindness, in their lack of bias, that they exemplified, the best of belief. And in my own view, which I would never inflict on anyone else, it is just merely the conclusions that I personally have come to at my age of 70 is, for me, the way to worship the universe, nature, life, each other, has to be looking with eyes completely open, unflinching, not trying to impose my fantasies and my fears on nature, but simply to learn from it, to absorb its greatness.
So as we study science and as scientists study and tell us things, we learn more and more, and it kind of answers what we sometimes think of as those unanswerable questions, or, oh my gosh, what could have happened to cause this? We know through science what did happen.
I don't believe in anything supernatural. In fact, I hate the word supernatural, because for me, supernatural is subnatural. It should be subnatural because it's not as great as nature. The idea of things that happened that, were exceptions to natural law are, to me, not sacred, because they seem to be violations of the beauty of nature. For me, finding the laws of nature is the most inspiring thing, because that's a way, when you love someone else, if you really love them, you want to know them more deeply, not to just be confirmed in your delusions about them, but to love them as they really are. And that's the way that I live, is that I'm filled with humility and joy and tenderness when I realize the workings of nature. And that's what gives me the chills and raises goosebumps and makes me swallow hard, just the feeling of how intricate and beautiful and connected nature is. And so I guess I reject any form of mystification, any shorthand that says, why is this the way things are? Oh, it's because God wants it to be. I don't see it that way personally, but I think, we're all finding our way, and I would never have told my children to believe what I believed. I wanted them to learn how to think and how to search, and I have respect and regard for whatever conclusion other people reach.
Amen. What wonderful words of wisdom.
Well, Lance, usually we wait till the end, but after listening to Ann's, the last bit of her answer there, I think that's what we're all about, right? I mean, this idea of we can all sit down and have a conversation. And if you and I and Ann have a different perspective, that's okay. And we don't have to push those things on to other people, and we can listen to them and probably learn from them. So tell people, Lance, since we've just got this perfect opportunity, what is our mission here at True Chat?
Well, the mission here at True Chat is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations.
How can we use these lessons in our modern society, and how might these observations that Ann has shared with us better inform our worldview? Well, that's what Lance and I will discuss in the next segment of the show. And we said it before, but it's absolutely worth saying it again. We enjoyed your book immensely, and Lance and I both sincerely appreciate you taking some time to speak with us again.
Justin, I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for asking such great questions and for being so thoughtful.
Ann joined us for a previous conversation that was just as insightful as this one, entitled, Who Should You Call? Science. So be sure to check it out if you haven't already. Ann Druyan is the author of Cosmos, Possible Worlds, which you can purchase by visiting thestateofus.org or anywhere books are found. How can we use these lessons in our modern society, and how might these observations Ann has shared with us better inform our worldview? To find out, keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back.
We are The State of Us. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
Today, we again had the distinct opportunity to speak with Ann Druyan, who has numerous accolades and is an expert at communicating the importance of science. And in fact, in the last episode that we did with her prior to this one, we discussed the importance of science, and you should definitely check it out if you haven't already listened to it. These are not necessarily ones that you have to listen to in any particular order, but they both offer different things, so be sure to look it up at thestateofus.org or anywhere you find podcasts. Lance, one of the things that we discussed with Ann in the first segment, and I thought she had some interesting answers, we didn't have time necessarily to dive into it there, is the Fermi paradox. Now, that is a discussion all its own, talking about the Fermi paradox. Part of the nature of any paradox is that you can talk yourself in a circle all day, you can make great points on both sides, and the seemingly true nature of both statements being said. If we find out that there is other sentient life out there in the universe, what does that mean for us humans? And the counter to that being, if we're playing the other side of the paradox, if we're the only ones that exist, then how would this change our outlook?
I would be very disappointed if we're the only people here. If we're the only intelligent life in all of the galaxies. I mean, because we have to, not only are there so many, how many ever, millions, dozens, whatever of planets, here's my lack of science knowledge, but there's that many galaxies, right? I mean, as far as we've been intelligent enough to extend, we're counting a multitude of galaxies. So who's to say that there's not more beyond the range of what we can find now? Because we can find out more now than Copernicus could or Da Vinci could. And who's to say in another 300 or 400 years, if we don't ruin the planet, that the people are going to be able to take it even further. It just depends on what that intelligent life is like. Are they going to be nice, or do they need us to be able to perpetuate their lifestyle?
Or the idea too, right, that we encounter other intelligent life that we decide to exploit.
If there is life out there and we find it, or they find us, who's at the top of the food chain, or what's their motivation for finding us or for us finding them? Are we finding them because we want to like expand our knowledge and our universe and or do we need a place to live. And so we're going to declare war on you and take you over.
If they're way smarter than us, then they're probably going to be the ones that dictate what the relationship is. Is it an agreeable relationship, one where we both benefit? Is it one where they're winning? Who knows? If we're on the same level of intelligence and same level of technological advancement, relative, I mean, not exactly, but close to it, then I think that changes things because, you both understand that it'd probably be foolish to engage in a pursuit to conquer the other one. Not that that's stopped us before, though, as a society from engaging in very foolish, tasks. So I guess the route I go with it, Lance, is less of that. And I go the route of what it means for us as a society if there's other life out there, which again, I think it would be a shame if there wasn't. But since we don't know yet, assuming that there is, under that assumption, I think it's that it verifies something that we've known for a while, but that I think we just haven't figured out how to overcome, which is that we have to figure out, if we are to survive long term, we have to figure out how to operate as one planet and one people instead of operating the way we do now, which is as some 200 sovereign countries, split up across all these different areas, all with our own competing and diverging interests, especially if you run into a situation where the life that we run into is not friendly.
I think our nature would be that we would come together and put aside our differences. That happens, the Soviet Union and the United States and Great Britain put aside their differences to fight Hitler and the Japanese and Mussolini. Unfortunately, my belief is we wouldn't stay that way. If we were able to win the situation, we would turn back in on us. We've seen that as American citizens, put aside our differences because we feel like we're under attack. And then as soon as the threat of the attack is gone, we go back into only caring about ourselves. It's unfortunate that our nature seems to be that way. I don't know how else to describe it.
No, I think that what you're talking about is history. We know that typically over the course of our history, that is kind of how we operate. If we're faced with some massive threat that threatens all of us, then we tend to put aside differences temporarily to overcome that and then go back to fighting about our differences again. At the same time, I guess my point is, I think that by the time we realized we had to come together, it's too late at that point. I think the obstacles that we would face are too great that, by the time we say, oh, geez, yeah, this is real bad, we gotta do something, because it'll be so unlike anything we've ever encountered. I guess my point is, I think the minute, and preferably prior to learning of other life in the universe, preferably now, you begin the process of preparing for that inevitable day. If you're of the belief.
So you don't believe in the crop duster and Will Smith saving us in Independence Day? You don't believe that we'll all come together, and even though it's late, that we'll still stand up to the forces of evil and we'll achieve because we're the world and the world will be saved by Americans?
Hey, I've seen that movie a lot of times.
I'm just throwing it out there.
I know. That's the hard thing about this. And part of the reason that you don't find, we can't have a lot of super accurate conversation about it is so much of it we just don't know. We have no idea.
Right. It's so much supposition.
There's so much of that you have to guess at, because that depends, I think, a lot on, who the aliens are. And I'm not assuming they're hostile in this situation. I'm just assuming maybe they're so advanced they want to engage with us on some new project, and they're on some kind of timeline. And it's like, well, we need you to, if you want this great deal that we've got, we need you on it now. And it's like, oh, well, there's no way we can do it that fast because we haven't even figured out our world politics yet. I think there's a lot of scenarios where you encounter something where we just can't move fast enough because we waited too long, because we tend to be reactionary instead of planning ahead. And I guess that is, to me, that's the biggest wake up that'll be, is if we survive meeting other species, it'll be, we have to have more foresight and less reactionary squabbling, because, that's the way we'll survive. And I do think that when faced with survival or extinction, we tend to make the choices in the interest of survival. So if we learn the only way to survive is to plan ahead, then my guess is we'll probably start doing that, if, again, provided the opportunity. But to answer the second half.
So what else do you have for us?
Right. The second half of that to me is real simple. We talked a lot about if there's others out there, but if we're the only ones, to me, the answer is simple. All the more reason that we have to get our act together here on this planet, because I think, to me, it would signal a responsibility that we have of one of two things. Either, Lance, there's been other intelligent life, right? And none of them have survived. So there is something coming on our horizon, some great challenge that we're going to face that everybody else has failed. Whatever that is, you reach a certain point of scientific, advancement, and then you hit this wall and you're faced with it and you fail and you die, and you're extinct. Or, there are not other species out there and there is no great test and we can just go on for as long as our Earth will sustain us. But I think you have to plan for the former of the two, not the latter, because the latter is we just keep going on like we've always gone.
That was a very long, simple answer. So I'm not so sure your answer is that simple. I don't really think it's a simple answer, and I don't think it's a simple question. I think that there really is. I think it's a much more in-depth answer as what you just shared. But how would it change our outlook? Who knows? I mean, is that going to get us to work to save the planet? I think it opens up a lot of different variables, because how do we work to save the planet? If it's just us, or as Ann talked about in her books, one of the reasons we need to explore is because we need to start looking for different places when either A, she doesn't go in so much as we destroy this planet, but as this planet will be destroyed. The sun is burning out, and so many millions of years, we and I won't be here, but we will need a new place to live if we can perpetuate the species through the time galaxies of the cosmic calendar. So either way, this planet is not going to continue to exist ad infinitum. So if we as a species are going to continue, we need to continue then to look for other places to live, because this one's not going to last forever, even if we take really, really good care of it, because the sun's going to go away. And once the sun goes away, then our ability to evolve and live, it doesn't matter how quickly or we can evolve or change things.
And then Bradley had a point about this second side of this, which is if we're the only ones. And what was that, Bradley?
As I was listening to Ann describe the Fermi paradox and listening to you two talk about it, I was wondering, could we ever prove with any piece of technology, could we ever prove that there isn't any other intelligent life out there besides us?
Nope. That's a real simple answer. Justin said he has simple answers, but that's the simple answer to that question is nope.
That's the nature of the paradox, is that, you really can't prove that side of it. Or if you can, it's a technology we haven't developed yet, like Lance was hinting at before. There's in the neighborhood of 100 billion planets in our galaxy, and there's in the neighbor of 100 billion galaxies in our observable universe. And the key there is observable universe. That's what we can see right now. And the only reason that we can't see more than that is there hasn't been enough time since the universe was born for the light to reach us from the edges of what we can see right now. So, I guess to say that it's impossible that we could ever prove that assumes that it's impossible that we could develop that technology. Obviously, I don't think it's something we can prove right now. I mean, unless, we're wrong and God just descends from the heavens and informs us of this one day. I short of that right now, I don't think there's any hope of being able to disprove that.
Too many zeros in all those 100 billions for this redneck liberal. You lost me with 100 billion different planets and 100 billion different galaxies. Yeah. The redneck liberal got lost in the zeros there. So I'll go back to my answer. Nope.
When we talk about what we were just discussing for this segment, I think it becomes so clear to me the importance of all of us moving forward. And that we all have a role to play, and that we don't think about it that way often. But when Ann explains it, that to me became pretty clear.
As someone who is a non-science person, it's not that I don't think it's important or that I don't agree with it. I absolutely put my faith and trust in science. I'm amazed at what these people have found out and what they're still finding out in their studies. But the ability for her to write it in such a way that I was able to understand it, at least on my level, and it made so many good points to me, is the reason why I would recommend this book for everyone. She does a wonderful job of explaining this interdependency and our interconnectedness, as you've said, in such a manner that even somebody who, like me, who's not a scientific kind of person, just thoroughly enjoyed it and couldn't put it down.
It's not that often that a work comes along where we can give it not only, its due appreciation, but also our full recommendation, and feel like anybody in our audience could appreciate the book and something in it. Because a lot of times the books that we read are they're for a very particular audience. And I think in this case, I don't feel like that's the case here. I think if you are curious about the world, and that's probably the case if you're listening to this show, you can get something from this book. Lance, the reason that we took time to bring Ann on the show and have this two-part conversation with her is because of this centralized mission that we have, which you shared in the second segment of today's show. So we don't have to share it again. Isn't that great? It's pretty great. But
how will people know the show's over? Oh, I know how. People will know because they have to tell other people, because that's the only way that it makes this mission any good is if you get out there and share our show with other people. And you need to be able to tell them that, well, you can find them on Stitcher or the Redneck Liberals' favorite, Spotify or Apple Podcast or anywhere else fine podcasts are found. You can also let them know that we're a syndicated radio show, or they can do it my way. And that is you just go to True Chat. You just type in True Chat into your search engine and it'll take you right there, and you can click on and listen on your little computer, So there's just all kinds of ways there, but we need you to spread the word to listen so everybody can join in and make this world a better place to live.
Absolutely. And you can get all that information, like Lance said, on our website. So be sure to check it out. For the State of Us on True Chat in Urbana, Ohio, I'm Justin T. Weller.
And I'm Lance Jackson.
Special thanks to Ann Druyan for taking time to join us for 2 shows. We really appreciate the conversation with her. And of course, a thanks to Bradley for putting this all together and making us sound like we know what's going on. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change. Be sure to check out our website, thestateofus.org, for books, articles, and all the ways to tune in. thestateofus.org.